Bienvenidos a la tercera jornada, la clausura ya casi del Congreso, con la penúltima mesa, que es la tercera también de este día. Lleva por nombre Autonomía y Contratos, percepciones de las mujeres sobre los acuerdos de gestación por sustitución. Para ello, pues me van a permitir una breve introducción de nuestras ponentes. Aquí a mi izquierda, a su derecha, en el centro, tienen a Norma Natalie Gutiérrez. Ella es licenciada en Derecho por la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México. En octubre de 2022, si me equivoco, no duden en corregirme. En octubre de 2022 gestó a un bebé cuyos padres comitentes son españoles y nació en Ciudad de México. Durante la gestación aprovechó para concluir sus estudios de licenciatura. Durante el proceso de gestación por sustitución, su situación la propuso para elaborar la tesina en la UNAM. Y además, pues monitorizó cada etapa del proceso legal y de ayuda a los padres de intención que se encontraban allá en la Ciudad de México con problemas para emitir el pasaporte de los bebés. Norma, además, es mamá de un adolescente de 13 años y un niño de 4 años, que creo que los vi por aquí. Vive con ellos y con su marido. A su derecha, a su izquierda, pero a su derecha, está Kelsey Stoljoy, que es madre de 2 hijos y en proceso del tercer embarazo como gestante, que ellos llaman en Estados Unidos surrogate journey. Después de años sin quedarse embarazada y de que su familia sufre infertilidad, decidió dedicarse a ayudar a otros a formar sus propias familias. Y está trabajando en su grado de enfermería para entrar en esa labor y en el parto para ayudar a futuras madres en el proceso, digamos, del parto, es decir, la especialidad de comadrón aquí. Entonces ya a su derecha del todo, a la izquierda de Kelsey, tenemos a Becky Loftus, que es madre de 4 hijos, asesora superior de formación. Se ofreció a ayudar a buenos amigos a cumplir con su deseo de ampliar la familia y ser padres. Allí en Irlanda, pues hace 4 años, con 43 años, dio a luz a un bebé sano. Compartió su experiencia en los medios de comunicación para que la gente entienda qué es la gestación por sustitución y además que comprendan también cuál es el punto de vista de las gestantes. Espera además que este verano del 23 Irlanda apruebe la legislación sobre gestación por sustitución. Tengo eso entendido. Entonces, ahora ya saben quiénes son las ponentes, un poquito cuál es su información. Lo que vamos a hacer a continuación es que les iré haciendo una serie de preguntas y les iremos cediendo la palabra a cada una de ellas para que nos vayan primero ubicando y luego ya contando su experiencia. Como la mesa va sobre legalidad, autonomía, contratos, haré alguna pregunta sobre todo relacionada con la legalidad para que vayamos conociendo cómo es cada uno de los casos. ¿Sí? Okay. Vale, pues si les parece podríamos empezar pues por hacernos una idea genérica, digamos algún apunte sobre cómo está la legislación en cuanto a la gestación por sustitución, pues en México, en Estados Unidos, en Irlanda, y compartir pues algunos puntos, digamos, pues muy generales de la ley, como por ejemplo, pues si está regulado cuántas veces se puede gestar o cosas por el estilo. Norma, por favor.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Bueno, es un gusto estar aquí y es también un honor el que me hayan invitado. Y bueno, yo antes de empezar quisiera enviarle un fuerte abrazo a todos los hombres y mujeres que buscan cumplir su sueño de ser padres, y espero que este día les sirva para reflexionar, para aprender, para conocer cómo llevar un proceso realmente pues sano, legal, que no les cause conflictos y que lo disfruten. Sé que a lo mejor muchos tienen en su corazón y anhelan pues que llegue un bebé a su vida, y qué mejor que este día que se preparó para que ustedes puedan entender y conocer más sobre este tipo de procesos. Y pues nada, mi nombre ya lo mencionaron, tengo 34 años. En cuanto a la pregunta, Pues como tal en México no existe una regulación que nos diga a las mujeres cuántas veces podemos ser gestantes. Lo que sí es que en los requisitos nos mencionan que deben de ser mujeres que no tengan más de 2 cesáreas. Entonces, pues lógicamente si una mujer ya tuvo 3 cesáreas, es ilógico que pueda volver a ser gestante. Pero que la ley nos diga, no, esta mujer ya gestó 3, 4 veces y han sido partos normales, sin problema, y si la mujer no se pone en riesgo y cumple con todos los requisitos, va a poder seguir siendo gestante las veces que pues su condición física, sin que ella se ponga en riesgo, va a seguir.
Gracias, Norma. Kelsey, pues si quiere decir unas palabras sobre usted y luego responder así una pregunta genérica sobre la legislación, por favor.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. I'm grateful to be here. I'm a mama too, surrogate twice, working on my 3rd journey. Basically, I know there's we have contracts in the U.S., so everything's done through lawyers. We're very protected over there through that contract. As for regulations, there's obviously you have to be healthy and stuff like that. I know surrogacy's it depends on your clinic over there. So some clinics won't let you have more than 4 or 5 journeys. Some don't really determine, other than if you've had C-sections. In Mexico, it's 3 or 4 you can have C-section. But other than that, it's pretty easy. I mean, we have our contracts and that's it.
Muchas gracias. Pues Becky, igualmente, si quiere decir unas palabras sobre usted y luego ya adentrarse en esta pregunta genérica, se lo agradecemos.
I'm just getting the translation. It's like one of those telephone calls, when someone speaks and then you have to wait a minute. My name is Becky Loftus and I am a mom of 4 myself. I went through my own infertility journey where our first child was no problem. We went to Italy, got pregnant, as you do. And then we had secondary infertility where I did IVF and had my twins. And then my twins must have pressed a button inside, and 10 months later I was pregnant again, naturally, with my son. Surprise. But I wouldn't have it any other way. And then I'm from Ireland. And in Ireland, we have no legislation whatsoever at the moment around surrogacy. But like nearly every country, it's happening. We have the medical know-how to do it, and we have situations like in my situation, I was away for a weekend, thinking I was going away for a relaxing weekend, but came home after offering myself up then to carry another baby, which I had not planned. My friends are 2 dads, and we just casually started the conversation about, did they have plans to be parents? They would make great parents. They always showed so much care and love towards our children. They just had those traits that you would naturally think would make great parents. And they said no, that it was such a challenge for them financially, medically, all that sort of thing. And something popped into my head and I said, well, I think I would consider maybe being a surrogate, but I'd have to do some research and that. So that's what I did. One of the concerns, I had a great bunch of friends. I had 4 friends that I consulted. What do you think? And they all came back with very different things for me to think about, which was fantastic. One was very concerned about my health. Medically, I was an old mother at that stage. I was 42. I'm 47 now. So she was concerned of that. Another person had a concern over laws. How is this going to work out? My mother had her concern, for my health and things like that. So I had to do my research. So it's not legal in Ireland, but it's not illegal in Ireland to do such a thing. So as I said before, it is happening in Ireland, but very much between maybe a sister offering a sibling, or like in my case, a close friend, where I knew I had that trust. I knew I could trust they weren't going to leave me with a 5th child, though I knew where they lived, so I would have dropped it on the doorstep. And they could trust me, of course, not that. I had huge wonders, like anybody who's new to surrogacy, questions. how could I give away a baby? That was the big question that was on my mind, as well as the questions I always got asked. How do you do that? And because we don't have legislation in a country, these are loads of questions. Like in Spain, you have these questions because it's not a conversation that's happening. It's not something that comes up. You don't know surrogates. It's quite something that happens very privately, like in our own country. So we don't have legislation, but we're very, very lucky that we have government as well as the other opposition parties that are all backing, all in favour of surrogacy. I think they realise that it's happening, and if something's happening, you need to legislate to protect. That's really kind of a bottom line. You can compare to other countries and situations and stories that we hear, bad stories, but that comes down to then how you legislate and how you monitor and how you control that. So we're very lucky that we have government support. I'm a member of a party, Fine Gael, which is one of the parties in coalition in government at the moment. I'm the founder member of the Fine Gael Women's Network, where we try to make sure that these women's issues are kind of highlighted and brought to the front. Something which I think was very good is that our government, the people that are looking to get surrogacy legislated came together in a coalition. And so instead of it being an issue for LGBTQ, or instead of it being an issue for heterosexual parents, or instead of it being very kind of separated, they've come together and are treating it as a surrogacy issue. And regardless of the parent's gender or, anything like that, it's about surrogacy. So they've come together as a coalition. I think that has been instrumental in our progression, our journey for legislation, because at first we were going to slowly adapt our legislation. So we were going to look at just domestic surrogacy. And then we were going to look at international surrogacy, and then retrospective surrogacy, so situations like ours that have already happened. I'm still the legal mother, and there's all that stuff around that. But I'm talking too much, aren't I?
It's perfectly okay.
So the coalition really pushed for every scenario of surrogacy to be dealt with in our health bill. So we have a health bill that came out in 2022 that's up, ready to go to the floor of our government floor to actually then instigate it or to approve it, but it only came at domestic. And this coalition, the people that fight like you do, which is so commendable, are pushing now that. So our government now have taken that on board. They created an Oireachtas, that's an Irish word for a committee, basically, by all political parties, by all the coalition, everyone that's involved in surrogacy. And now, hopefully, our legislation, it's still taking time, it's still slow, but we are at a point now where we're going to be looking in our legislation at domestic surrogacy, international surrogacy, so the baby's rights when they come home, and also retrospective situations like mine where we can finally give the equality to the parents that they deserve. So that's where we're at.
Muchas gracias. Están saliendo cuestiones muy, muy interesantes que estoy tomando nota. Vamos a coger un punto en común. Como no hay, digamos, una legislación específica, les quisiera preguntar, pues, en su caso, ¿qué firmaron? Un poco sobre qué se encontraron ahí dentro, o si recibieron alguna ayuda, digamos, legal, específica, para ver qué estaba sucediendo en cada uno de sus casos. Norma, por favor.
En mi caso, yo firmé un contrato y una jurisdicción voluntaria. Primero se firmó el contrato y 15 días antes de mi transferencia embrionaria, lo que se hizo fue firmar esta jurisdicción voluntaria. En su momento, cuando yo firmé el contrato, la misma abogada con la que yo lo firmé fue la misma que lo firmaron mis papitos de intención. No hubo como que cada uno tuviera a su asesor, que es lo que pues se debería de hacer en este tipo de procesos, que cada uno tenga a su asesor para que pues defienda tanto los derechos de él y también los míos, y no sea la misma abogada la que esté en su momento pues viendo por ambas partes. En cuanto a la jurisdicción voluntaria, pues es un documento el cual menciona los hechos del por qué los papás están queriendo llevar a cabo este proceso. en el cual se menciona la filiación, se le hace saber al juez que el ovocito y el esperma que yo voy a gestar no corresponde a mi genética, para que una vez que el juez reciba lo que es el contrato con la jurisdicción voluntaria y sus anexos, como son nuestros documentos personales, en la fecha en la que se me hizo la transferencia, cuántos embrioncitos se me transfirieron, cuántos hijos tengo. Me pidieron las actas, por ejemplo, de nacimiento de mis hijos, para que se le demostrara al juez que yo ya era mamá. El juez, afortunadamente, conmigo cayó en un buen juzgado, porque en la Ciudad de México es relativo el juzgado. Por ejemplo, hay 10 juzgados y de esos 10, 3 son súper accesibles. O sea, es como de, gestación subrogada. Sí, súper bien, es exigente, pero al final saca a tiempo la sentencia, puedes registrarlo en poco tiempo, el pasaporte, sin problema. Pero también hay jueces y juezas que dicen, no, gestación subrogada, esto está mal. Entonces empiezan desde un comienzo a poner muchísimos peros, en el aspecto de que, en mi caso, por ejemplo, me mandaron una trabajadora social por parte del juzgado a mi domicilio, para que ella corroborara de que pues yo no vivía a lo mejor en un estado de vulnerabilidad, y que ellos estaban aprovechando de mi situación económica para que yo hiciera el proceso. Ok, me mandaron a la trabajadora social, todo estuvo muy bien. Y no obstante a eso me dijeron, bueno, una psicóloga, pero una psicóloga ya del juzgado, o sea, ya es independiente a la psicóloga que te pone la agencia para saber si eres apta para el proceso. Creo que fue lo único exigente que en su momento mi juez solicitó, pero hay jueces que no, o sea, hay jueces que ni con eso les basta para decir, ok, está haciendo el proceso, pues de alguna forma legal, aunque no esté regulado, lo están tratando de llevar de la mejor manera. Y buscan, ¿no?, siempre alguna situación para estar pidiendo requisitos, que es lo que a veces hace que se prolongue el proceso. Entonces, el que no hay una regulación hace que cada juez lleve el proceso a su propia consideración, a sus propios criterios, a lo que él considere que debe de pedir y que no pedir, porque tampoco los jueces tienen una certeza jurídica de decir, lo voy a llevar así porque ya hay una ley que me diga paso a paso cómo es que se debe de llevar. Entonces, como que ellos, para tener esa seguridad de que el bebé pues va a llegar a una familia en la cual pues es deseado, es esperado, se le va a dar una buena vida, proteger esa parte del menor, también proteger a la gestante, que no se esté vulnerando sus derechos, que no se esté abusando de ella, de que a lo mejor no comprenda la situación, de que es una mujer que diga, ok, me voy por el dinero, pero no entiendo, pero entonces siento que es complicado el que no haya una regulación que especifique paso a paso qué es lo que se debe de hacer, porque de esta manera los jueces lo llevan a su propio criterio, y como puede que lo faciliten, como puede que pues se prolongue al final la estancia de los papás cuando nace el bebé y puedan salir del país en un tiempo no mayor a 3 meses con el pasaporte.
¿Cuánto problema deriva de la jurisdicción voluntaria, por lo que veo? Estaba hablando también antes de que había una abogada común. ¿Venía de parte de los padres comitentes, de su parte? ¿Eran conocidos?
No eran ni de los padres ni era mío. Cuando yo entré a la agencia ya trabajaba con este despacho, porque pues eran abogadas que se dedicaban a este tipo de la afiliación, ya sea por bebés nacidos de gestación subrogada o por mujeres que pues se casan, a lo mejor tienen al bebé, método ropa. Y la abogada era muy buena abogada y ya tenía su equipo legal, entonces en el contrato y en la jurisdicción, su equipo, todas se autorizaban. Pero yo siempre tuve contacto con la misma abogada. En su momento, por ciertos documentos o para firmar, me recibía otra abogada. Pero nosotros, los papás, ni yo, decidimos ni impusimos con qué abogados llevar nuestro proceso. Aunque hay papás que ya se informan y ellos dicen, ok, agencia, trabajo contigo, pero yo traigo a mis abogados o yo quiero trabajar con estos abogados. En mi caso no fue así. En mi caso fue con unas abogadas que en lo personal pues fueron muy, muy buenas, a pesar de que pues yo llegaba al despacho y había muchas, pero todas me dieron la atención, en su momento respondieron todas mis dudas. O sea, yo no tuve ningún conflicto con la parte legal, porque igual se firmó el contrato, me entregaron mi jurisdicción, me entregaron mi contrato, cualquier duda o cualquier situación que se presentaba, tanto a mí como a los papás, nos asesoraban de una manera buena, pero no hubo como que el juez viera, que ahorita ya lo está exigiendo, que la gestante tenga su abogado y los papitos intención a su abogado. A lo mejor en ese momento el juez que nos tocó no lo solicitó así, pero hay jueces que sí lo piden, que sea así.
Kelsey, un poco esta pregunta venía por lo que estaba usted comentando antes, que llega el caso en que han de firmar y tienen que confiar, digamos, en la ayuda legal de esas otras personas. ¿Nos puede explicar su caso, por favor?
So in the U.S., we meet our parents, and then once we match, the parents will draft up a contract with a lawyer. You're also given a lawyer separate. They're separated. So then once they send you the contract, it's very detailed from everything from where you can travel to what time you can travel to if they want you on a special diet. Everything's in that contract from what you can travel, like car and all of that, that you have to have insurance on your car to drive. It's very, very detailed and protective on both sides for the surrogate and for the intended parents. So then they will draft up a contract. They send it to your lawyer. You look it over. If there's anything you want to change or discuss, you talk to your lawyer, and they can discuss with the other lawyer about like the changes and on agreements on if that's okay with the intended parents. And then you guys sign contracts, and as long as everything is followed on the contracts, like for me, when birth happened, there was nothing after birth. Everything was taken care of through the lawyers. They just go to the court, get a certificate that says baby's for the parents, and the parents can take the baby. And it's pretty much it. Simple, easy, to the point. Very controlled over there.
Yeah, a lot of stamps.
Yeah.
Ay, perdón. Becky, por favor, pues un poco la misma pregunta. En su caso, pues si tuvo que firmar algún tipo de documento, si recibió ayuda legal, vino algún abogado, procurador, alguien que la orientara, en su caso.
Yeah, so I think it's very similar here in Spain, that the only laws that we could follow during our journey is just a normal law of a child being born, where there's custody rights and things like that of parents, separate, etc. So because there is no legislation or no laws, there was nothing that we could follow, as well as the fact if there's no legislation, if anything that we came up, if we did consult lawyers and get an agreement, it doesn't stand up in court at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I'm the mother and one of them, was the father, and we would have those rights in the present law. So we couldn't, the only thing that we did do is we sat down and we had a conversation about how we saw the journey. Did they have any requirements for me? So I couldn't be a natural blonde anymore. They wanted me to, no dyeing my hair. They didn't want me to take certain, well, I wasn't on any medication, but they had some input, and I kind of gave them my thoughts, and they put filtered water in my house, so I got a new filtered water in the house. So they were the first time parents, so they were like, everything was, they were so worried about anything that. So that was it. We just had a casual conversation about that sort of thing, but legally we couldn't, there was nothing.
Y entonces, en el caso de contemplar, por ejemplo, posibles complicaciones, ¿hay algún seguro en caso? Imagino que en el caso de Estados Unidos, como hay tanta intervención de los leguleyos, pues ¿cómo es en su caso, Becky? ¿Hay algún tipo de seguro de por medio? Como ha hablado ahora de algo como un poco más informal, por decirlo así. Entonces, ¿qué pasa si hay alguna complicación? ¿Hay algún seguro? ¿Se va directamente a sanidad en general? ¿O?
So no, if there's complications between the relationship, like if we fell out or there's nothing, we would, I could easily have said, actually I feel a connection, I want to keep the baby, and we'd have to go to court and come up with something like that. If there was medically a complication, we did have this conversation, and we actually had it earlier about kind of, if we wanted to abort the pregnancy for some reason, whether it was on their part or my part. So we did have kind of conversations about what ifs. Also, when we were coming up to the birth, I think we had to be very, very real. These were two very, very excited dads ready to start their family with their son. So they're very focused. But when I went in to give birth, for me, it was about coming out healthy and back to my children, that I had promised that this was going to be fine. So I gave the legal rights to my mother, so to say that if there was any medical complications that I couldn't answer for or give my opinion, that my mum had the rights to say that, look, it was Becky's life first, that was going to be a thing. So we just had to have that trust, and that's why we need legislation, because the best intentions and the best relationship you have with your sister or your friend during these, journeys, you just don't know, you can't anticipate what's going to happen. And when you don't have legislation, everybody is at risk. The surrogate, the intended parents, and the child. So if something like this is happening in our countries, we need to legislate to protect, because you can't guarantee that relationship is going to be as strong and that, so that's why we need these laws in place, like, Kelsey was saying, having very kind of clear, expectations from the beginning and an understanding and that sort of thing. And also as well, when we go from a country with no legislation but it's happening to a country that has legislation, we have to be prepared for that transition. We have to be prepared for that transition. Fear comes from no knowledge, not knowing. And it can be innocent. It can be just innocent questions people have from a good place. It's not even the people that were outside protesting. It's someone sitting beside you in a coffee shop that just don't understand. So we need to be prepared for that transition from when legislation happens in a country, that we have these conversations. And my first thing when I was looking at being a surrogate, I actually contacted a surrogate in the UK, actually, because I know that this has been involved in their cut for a long time, and asked those questions. So it's really important that we try to foster people asking questions and not think they're silly questions. Ask those questions, and for people to be open to answer these questions, because it is the unknown, and bad press gets the most press. We don't always hear about the 99% of these beautiful journeys that are happening. So so we need to be very careful of the whole journey that's happening.
Permítanme extender esa pregunta a Kelsey y a Norma. Kelsey, ¿nos podría decir algo más, digamos, sobre este tipo de, seguros? Porque a alguien, digamos, si surge alguna complicación, pues alguien tiene que asumirla. Entonces, ¿cómo, en esta intervención tan legalista en Estados Unidos, cómo se hace, cómo se cuela, digamos, este papel de asegurar cosas?
So I guess we'll talk about my second journey real quick then. So during my second journey, shortly after embryo transplant, my ex-fiance surprise tripped to Puerto Rico to propose to me. At the time, I didn't realize that was not somewhere that we could travel as pregnant because of Zika virus. I didn't even know Zika virus was still a thing at the time. I did contact the agency when I was leaving and let them know I was leaving, and my coordinator didn't even know that I couldn't travel there. Through that process, they also asked that my fiance got STD tested. Well, his came up positive with chlamydia, which transferred it to me. So immediately the intended parents freaked out. Anybody that knows about chlamydia, it's very easy to get rid of with antibiotics, doesn't hurt the baby, everything's good. But the intended parents were very scared and felt like they couldn't trust me and that I was putting their baby in harm's way. At 9 weeks pregnant, they asked me to get an abortion. At first I had agreed because I thought it would be easier than fighting them. Sorry. Eventually, after talking to my amazing agency and my amazing lawyer, we were able to get it to where I was able to protect my rights to not have to go get an abortion. My body and my rights were protected very well by all of them. The intended parents were not happy about this. They made the journey extremely difficult afterwards. But thankfully, due to those contracts and due to the amazing people that have helped me through my journey, At the end of the day, they have a very healthy boy. We're not in contact, which is their choice. But again, it comes back to having those rules and regulations that if a woman, I chose to carry a baby for somebody else, yes, that's their baby. They have a right whether they want that baby there or not. However, for a woman, I feel I would never personally get an abortion, and it's everybody's choice. But I personally couldn't look at this perfectly healthy baby and willingly go get rid of it. So I was very grateful that I had that contract in place and that we were able to protect my rights when it came to that situation, because it was very difficult on me as a mom to think about just getting rid of a baby for no reason. So.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. Muchas gracias. Norma, ¿quiere añadir?
Sí, bueno, en la Ciudad de México, referente al seguro a las gestantes, antes de su transferencia se les activa un seguro de gastos médicos mayores y un seguro de vida, precisamente para que durante su gestación se pueda cubrir cualquier tipo de situaciones que se lleguen a presentar, que la gestante pues se llegue a sentir mal, que llegue a tener sangrado, pues más que nada que las proteja a ellas. De hecho, primero se activa el seguro, posteriormente se firma contrato y ellas deben de tener un tiempo de carencia con su seguro de 3 meses, para que cuando llegue la transferencia, pues esa parte ya esté protegida y se eviten ciertos riesgos y que ella no pueda en su momento, pues, a dónde recurrir o qué hacer en caso de riesgos. Una vez activado el seguro, a la gestante se le hace llegar su póliza y una tarjeta digital. Y en el caso de la agencia, menos donde yo llevé mi proceso, sé que una persona a las 24 horas, pues, constantes, por si alguna de las gestantes se llegara a sentir mal, la pueda auxiliar, pero posterior a que se firma posterior a que se activa su seguro, se le da una plática de cómo utilizarlo, cómo ocuparlo, qué tiene que hacer ella en caso de emergencia. Entonces eso ha facilitado y ayudado a que, pues, si la chica se encuentra en un estado de riesgo, sepa qué hacer, sepa dónde recurrir, sepa cómo ocupar y utilizar su seguro en el hospital. Entonces eso me parece muy importante porque a la gestante el tener esa información hasta para ella le facilita, ¿no? Esto de me voy a sentir mal, sé qué hacer, sé a dónde recurrir, sé cómo hacer las cosas. Entonces siento que al menos aquí esa situación está muy bien controlada.
Claro, es que diferentes legislaciones pues nos lleva a diferentes escenarios, es que no hay otra. Vamos a aparcar un momentito la legislación, porque estaba ahora pensando, bueno, ya que la mesa va de autonomía y contratos, ¿no? Pues apartemos un momentito el contrato, respiremos ahí un poco. Vamos a preguntar un poco por la autonomía. ¿Qué pueden decidir las gestantes en Irlanda, en Estados Unidos, en México? Por ejemplo, las gestantes pueden escoger la familia comitente, los padres de intención pueden escoger la gestante, o no sé, o la cuestión monetaria, que siempre es una cuestión que acaba saliendo antes o después. Becky, ¿quiere usted empezar respondiendo?
Well, I suppose in our situation, it comes up with situations of siblings and friends doing it within Ireland. But once we have legislation put into place, we will be setting up a human reproductive regulatory authority. And there'll be like a committee, I suppose, that if you want to go ahead with domestic surrogacy, you're going to have to apply, I suppose. And there'll be a checklist and everything where, I 100% foresee, and I think it's the same all over and that's what's very important, is that it's equal contribution from both the surrogate choosing that right relationship, especially when it's not coming from a friendship or a sibling. This is now a situation where you're going to have people like Kelsey who feels like it's something she wants to give back, she wants to do, so it's about finding that. So I think it's very important that the surrogate has just as much input of choosing that relationship with the intended parents, just as the intended parents, because it's such a it's such an intimate relationship. And I think, you know, sometimes we don't think about that part. It's such a, you know, it's an honour actually to be a surrogate, because for anyone who's had a child, that especially that first pregnancy, you know, you're going through the first heartbeat listening to, the first movement, picking a name, like you have all this excitement. And now what you've been done is you've been invited to go through that journey with somebody else in such a close proximity, watching them, knowing you know what it's like, and then you see their hand and feel the kick, or they hear the... So anytime we went for scans, for my own children, it was me looking at the scans, you know, and trying to work out what it was, where now my vision was always on the intended parents, my friends, to see their reaction to that. And even at the birth, it was like, you know, I was watching them tear up and get emotional over this. So it's such an important relationship, even if you're coming from a point where the surrogate and the intended parent are new to each other. It's such an intimate and close relationship that it's so important that both the surrogate feels that connection as well as the intended parents. I would presume for multiple journeys, I've only done the one, and it was with my friends, so that was out of love for them. But yeah, I would say hopefully within Ireland we'll definitely kind of encourage that natural connection happens before all the paperwork and the legal side of things. So.
Kelsey, por favor, sobre esta línea.
All right. Yeah, so in the U.S., the process is, well, there's two ways you can do it. I personally went through a agency. What the agency does is they match you up with intended parents. But you can also do it solo. I didn't feel comfortable doing that because I don't know a lot of the laws and regulations. So I felt much more comfortable going through with an agency. So with my agency, they give you a piece of paper with a bunch of information you have to fill out, from religion to where you live, basic information that people would want to know. You attach photos of you and your family. They then take that, and that's your profile, and they send it to intended parents. Intended parents also have the same form with pictures that they send to you. So then you both get a chance to read all that information. If you like what you're reading, you can agree to do a video call. So then you go through Skype and you virtually meet your intended parents and your surrogate. You guys can have a conversation, ask questions that you need to ask about what the process is going to be for, like, you guys. And then after that, you get 48 hours to decide whether you want to match or not. And then if you don't match, they send you to another intended parent. If you do match, then you move on to contracts. So yeah, it's pretty simple.
Ya vemos, ya. Y Norma, en México, o sea, este tipo de decisiones de las gestantes pueden escoger, digamos, los padres de intención.
Sí, pues realmente esta pregunta va a tener dos respuestas, porque también depende mucho de la agencia donde vayas a llevar el proceso. Existen agencias que te dicen, te voy a enviar el perfil de los IPs, velo, si te agrada, hacemos el match. Una vez realizado el match, les dan aproximadamente una semana tanto a los papitos de intención como a la gestante para que decidan si quieren continuar con esa familia, y los papitos si quieren continuar con esa gestante. Como puede haber agencias que te dicen, ya te eligió una familia, te la presentan, ya sea en videollamada, o te presentan el perfil, y pues ya una vez que te los presentan, tienes que seguir con ellos tu proceso. Entonces, más bien, esa situación va a depender o va a variar del lugar en donde tú lleves tu proceso, porque como puede haber un lugar que sí te permitan decidir, como puede haber una agencia que no te lo va a permitir. Tampoco te lo va a imponer, porque tú bien puedes decir, no quiero continuar, pero tampoco te va a dar como otras opciones para decidir si hay más familias.
Claro. Y continuando así por el ámbito de la autonomía de la gestante, ¿en México se puede decidir la cantidad, se puede negociar, digamos, una compensación por la
cantidad?
gestación?
No. Algo que me gustaría agregar a mi respuesta anterior es que, por ejemplo, puede que ya no continúen ciertas familias, pero por la cantidad de embrioncitos, ¿no? Porque muchos papás obviamente a veces buscan embarazo gemelar y a veces la gestante dice, no, yo solo quiero embarazo de un bebé. Entonces pasa que cuando los presentan en el match les encantó a ambos el perfil, pero los papás dicen, no, es que yo busco embarazo gemelar, y la gestante, no, pero yo solo quiero un bebé. Entonces es cuando puede que ya no decidan continuar con el proceso. Con la compensación no hay como un trato, no es negociable. De hecho, eso ni siquiera lo hablan los IPs con la gestante. Es como que, a ver, vas a hacer tu proceso, esto es la compensación. Antes de que conozcan a la gestante, los papás a la gestante ya está consciente de lo que se le va a dar. Entonces no es ese tema pues realmente negociable. Creo que cada agencia maneja una cierta cantidad de compensación y cada gestante decide en dónde llevar su proceso y en dónde le va a convenir la parte de la compensación. También otra parte importante, que puede haber agencias que tienen muy buena compensación, pero la gestante no cubre con todos los requisitos para poder entrar al programa de esa agencia, y es cuando busca otras opciones, pero cuando uno entra a una agencia ya sabe lo que se le va a brindar de compensación.
Vale. Y ha sacado el tema de la transferencia de embriones. ¿También cambia dependiendo del lugar? Es decir, de que la gestante pueda decidir, bueno, se me transfiere uno, se me transfiere dos. Si nos movemos, digamos, a otro estado, a Sinaloa, me imagino, allá ¿tiene el mismo margen de decisión o cambia?
Pues es que realmente la decisión de que sea este tema que cambie es la agencia, porque cuando tú llegas a la agencia te dice, no, pues aquí la familia busca un embarazo gemelar. Entonces ya no están escuchando si tú como mujer quieres llevar el embarazo gemelar. Entonces muchas mujeres por pues la necesidad, por decir, ok, pues ya estoy en el programa, no hay otra opción, continúo. Otras dicen, no, voy a buscar otra opción donde sí se respete que no quiero un embarazo gemelar. Entonces esa respuesta no es tanto a la autonomía de la gestante, es dependiendo el lugar a donde vas a ir a hacer tu proceso, porque ellos como que ya te marcan esa situación.
Vale, gracias. Vamos a ver, Kelsey, el caso de Estados Unidos. ¿Usted puede negociar el precio por la gestación por sustitución, por surrogacy journey? ¿Tiene algún margen de decisión o ya le viene, digamos, impuesto por los contratos que tanto hemos estado hablando hasta ahora?
So basically, when I started, they start with a base compensation for a first-time surrogate, and then there's a package that you get with like a monthly allowance and stuff like that. And then, so for my second journey, it was kind of between this point and this point, you can pick a number and we'll send that to the intended parents. If they agree to that number, then, you know, that's what you're going to get. But it's all lined out in our contract based on what you're going to make, when you receive that money, any extras. So like if I have to have a hysterectomy or a C-section or any of that, it's all lined out in the contract. So both the IPs and the surrogates are completely aware of what compensation and all of that is. So like we kind of get a decision, I guess, like, cause we can, so like I said, they give us like a in between, and then you can ask the intended parents, and they can either agree or come back with another number. But for the most part, it's a general compensation that's well known beforehand.
Me llama mucho la atención que comente que está todo, digamos, dibujado, preconfigurado en el contrato, hasta el momento en que se puede no recibir. Y se pueden, entiendo que introducir muchas variables para cuando puede pasar eso. Le voy a hacer la misma pregunta que a Norma. ¿Usted puede decidir el número de embriones a transferir? ¿Es parte de las decisiones que usted puede tomar antes de firmar un contrato, por ejemplo?
So that question is actually asked on our profile. So on the profile that we fill out, it asks if you're comfortable doing single or double embryo transfer, and it also is on the intended parents profile where it says whether they want one or two. It's also discussed on that profile about reductions. So like if the embryo splits, if the parents are going to want you to keep the 2 or 3 or however, or if they want you to do a reduction. So all of that, again, is already lined up for us in contract, ready to go.
Vamos a movernos hasta Irlanda. Becky, ¿usted puede escoger la compensación o sugerir una cuantía para la compensación a los padres de intención?
Well, I suppose because we've no legislation and we've nothing to guide us on, it was very much a personal sit-down conversation, to be very open. I told them the reasons I was doing it is that I wanted to help them, have a family and have a baby. It wasn't a financial agreement. It was nothing to do with money for me at all. It was very much based on just wanting to help them out, but we had to talk about the practicalities. So like here in Spain, I'm sure when there are personal journeys happening here, it's about having those conversations about, look, you need to cover any medicine, anything. And, if I need maternity clothes, but after 4 kids, I had plenty. So, I should have asked for a tummy tuck after having another child, but I didn't get that, as you can see. But so when there's no legislation, then nothing to go by, it's very much sitting down and kind of just, finding out and you come, but then it's causing awkward conversations. It's then like things that are coming up that you haven't anticipated, and then having to call a friend and say, actually, can you pay for this? Or I didn't think I'd need this, or that sort of thing. So again, it just reinforces, having, structure and support for these beautiful journeys that people are going on already in Ireland and Spain. We need that kind of understanding. And Ireland will be going in a direction of altruistic surrogacy. So it's different to the other girls here, where it will be covering expenses. And I'm sure the ladies from the UK have covered this already, where they've gone through even another review of how expenses are going to be categorised and again in that. So I think that's the direction Ireland will go in, that we'll have an altruistic, it'll be expenses covered, it'll be very much structured and laid out, and that's what you need for these journeys. So.
Claro, pues dada esta particularidad de Irlanda, donde hay un vacío absoluto legal, pues permítame reformularle la pregunta que le he hecho a sus compañeras y así introduciré pues un tercer personaje, porque hemos hablado de agencias, que habían otros tipos de participantes, pero no hemos hablado nada de los médicos. Pues esta pregunta que va sobre la transferencia de embriones, no sé si usted puede escoger cuántos embriones se transfieren o si, por ejemplo, recaba la ayuda de un médico para tomar esa decisión. ¿Cómo funciona?
Yeah, so we have very capable IVF clinics in Ireland. I did my IVF through an amazing clinic, high technologies, the best doctors, etc. But because there's no legislation, none of the clinics in Ireland will deal with any surrogacy situations because they have no comeback. I could come back and say, or the parents could have come back and say, you've put too many embryos in Becky, or it's too open for them to be kind of brought to courts, etc. So no IVF clinic in Ireland will do any sort of embryo transfers or anything like that in Ireland because there is no legislation. So we had to go, and also because I was with a same-sex couple, we had to go to Cyprus. So there we got, because Cyprus deals with surrogacy and IVF, we got our advice from them. Also in our situation, because there was 2 dads, one of my requests, I suppose, was that I didn't want to give my eggs. I wanted just give me the little embryo, I'll grow it for you and give it back. I suppose for me, I didn't want to complicate it with my children. They already were very understanding with the whole situation. In fact, I think politicians need to speak to children and ask these questions, because it was very simply, my youngest was 4 at the time, my son, and I just said to him, we're going to Cyprus with our friends and they can't have a baby. There was a bit of biology, a quick biology lesson that they don't have a womb. Anyway, they got it. And I said, they're going to put the baby in mommy's tummy, mommy's going to grow the baby. And they were like, yeah, okay. And my eldest daughter, who already had these 3 siblings, said, is that an extra sibling? I said, no, you're fine, you're just stuck with the 3. But they just got it. They just understood the whole concept, except one went into school. And it was news time in school, and they said, oh, my mommy's having a baby and giving it away. So I had to explain that she was right, but it was for good reasons I was giving it away. Yeah, though I would give my others away. But so going back to the original question, we did get guidance then from the IVF clinic, who deals with this all the time based on my. But what they did was we did 2 embryo transfers because it was 1 egg donor from Cyprus, but 2 fathers contributed sperm, so they wanted an embryo from each in the hopes of twins, but unfortunately only one little boy stuck, so we just had that. So yeah, we got guidance on that, and they based on age and how you feel, and it's very much up to the surrogate, I believe. Like it's our body of how we feel we're going to do those things. So yeah, we did get guidance.
Claro, estos interrogantes genéricos sobre la autonomía, un poco pues quién decide, quién responde. Por lo que ha ido saliendo hasta ahora, hemos visto pues decisiones que se toman antes de iniciar el proceso, incluso durante la gestación. Pues vamos al tercer momento, después del parto, pues un poco qué decisiones se pueden tomar o quién responde de las molestias que puedan surgir posparto y demás. Norma, por favor, si puede empezar usted.
Claro, los contratos y el seguro refiere que una vez nacido el bebé, los papitos de intención tienen que darle continuidad a la gestante 3 meses posteriores, tanto con la parte psicológica como la parte médica, porque pues existen mujeres que pueden aliviarse y estar pues bien, tranquilas, lo van asimilando ellas poco a poco de una manera razonable. Y existen otras que, pues de igual manera, pero pues les entra la depresión posparto, o quieren nada más estar llorando, o están enojadas. Había una que me decía, no, yo me peleé hasta con mi suegra, mi esposa, con todo el mundo. Entonces la mandaron al psicólogo, porque yo creo ya estaba ya súper hormonal posterior, o sea, posparto. La parte médica igual, se quedan consultas pagadas, aproximadamente 3, 4 consultas, pero también te hacen saber que si tú necesitas o sientes en tu cuerpo algún malestar, pues va a estar como que el médico disponible para ti, para que se te dé pues esa atención médica y psicológica, para que pues tu posparto también lo pases atendida y lo pases acompañada por profesionales y no sea como que ya nació el bebé y te dejen así a la deriva.
Y Kelsey, en el caso de Estados Unidos, ¿qué pasa después del parto? Si nos puede aclarar, pues esto, quién responde, si puede tomar alguna otra decisión, cómo acudir usted, digamos.
So it's all laid out in the contract. You're given insurance if you don't have insurance, and the intended parents are required to keep that insurance on you for a certain time after birth. So if anything happens, any complications, like even if you leave the hospital and you end up bleeding a lot after, like you still have that coverage to go and make sure that everything's okay. So like based on that, like everything is covered after postpartum up to a certain point. I think it's like 3 or 4 months. I think about that. They'll cover your insurance, so everything's taken care of.
O sea, la idea general es temporal, digamos 3, 4 meses después del parto, digamos que... Y causas y sobrevenidas, si sucediera alguna cosa relacionada con el posparto que viene en un momento posterior. Supongo que por lo que ha dicho ya es ir al seguro. Vale, gracias. Becky, no sé si reformularle la pregunta dada la situación de allí, pero bueno, desde la autonomía, ¿quién responde, digamos, de esas molestias, riesgos, complicaciones que pueden salir después del parto en el caso de Irlanda?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research, but I was very much concentrated on the journey and the emotions and the hormones. I didn't know what was to come. I didn't know that moment of giving birth how I was going to feel. I knew the journey was very different to my own journeys with my children. I knew that I wasn't creating that bond that I did with my own children. I knew that it was just, it was very much growing their baby and giving it back, and it was just a different journey. But I still had to be open to hormones, women's hormones, of how they were going to play out. But we were very much in the dark. We didn't have contracts. We didn't have professionals. We didn't have I didn't even have other surrogate moms that I could really rely on or talk to about this. So, you know, we didn't know how to kind of look for that. Like we didn't know about even that you were talking about getting psychological support and counselling. I mean, I probably should have done that. I probably should have, you know, did a bit of that afterwards. I think I was okay, just my normal crazy. So I think I was fine, but you know, I think I probably should have done things like that. So it was very much up to kind of just, you know, trial and error. And if something had happened, I would have just had to pick up the call to my friends and really rely on that relationship that we had, that they would say, of course, we're going to, you know, get you medical support or help you or whatever. So again, it's an unknown when you don't have legislation. And no matter how close you are to those people, you just don't have that support or that understanding of how of those things that need to be put into place that we didn't. And I was lucky, I think, but it could have gone a different way where I could have suffered from postpartum depression or things like that, and then I would have been left in this, do I call them? Do I ask for help? So, you know, it just again, it reiterates why we need structure. You know, we fear that it's a situation where we're abusing women or women don't have things, but in fact, by not having legislation, not having support, that's what we're doing. We're leaving women like me who want to do this, but leaving us in the dark with no support, no official or professional support. So that's what we're actually doing to women like myself. But yeah.
Pues su experiencia pues me está levantando, claro, muchos interrogantes y mentalmente pues ya empiezo a hacer comparativas de un caso con otro y tal. Y no puedo dejar pasar la ocasión de preguntarles sobre un aspecto que pasa aquí en España, y es que hacer publicidad sobre la gestación por sustitución pues está prohibido y está perseguido, claro, está castigado. Y entonces, en su caso, en Irlanda, claro, al no haberle una legislación, digamos, específica, enterarse de la gestación por sustitución, ¿cómo se hace? ¿Cómo se accede a esta información o cómo tiene contacto con la gestación por sustitución, en su caso?
So it's come down to a lot of very good intentions from people who have gone through the journeys already, who have been to the Ukraine or who've done it in Ireland with siblings or friends, and it's them that have set up Facebook groups, and you know, they've done it on their own bat basically. So there is Facebook groups, and it is a bit of a secret still. It's very it's not a conversation, and if it does come up at the dinner table, or if my conversation comes up, there's lots of questions and that sort of thing. But yeah, so we don't have any laws against advertising, but it's not something that you would see on a billboard or you would see on the TV or radio. It's very much done via kind of social media, word of mouth. We have conferences where agencies will come to Ireland and advertise their services, etc. So it's very much that if you have come to the point of surrogacy, and I always say, you never choose surrogacy. Surrogacy is that last resort or that only option for people. They tend to have to do it themselves to research and that sort of thing. And because we don't have the conversation, because we don't have, you know, legislation or now we do have open conversations. Our media are very good. It's always got it's always very positive. But you will, anytime I did media, I did one of the bigger a late night talk show. And I had to take my mother's phone away from her because all these comments saying how cruel I was and how I had traumatized this child and I was this horrible, horrible woman, and that. But it comes from lack of knowledge. I mean, it's literally lack of knowledge. And what we need to, and we had this conversation earlier, is that it's fine having an opinion, and I'm quoting some, it's not my own thing, but having opinion, but it has to be an informed opinion, and these people are not giving themselves opportunities to ask those questions and that sort of thing. So there's no advertising, and if you want to know about surrogacy in Ireland, and possibly maybe similar to Spain, it's nearly like an underground. It's like Googling and trying to find these Facebook groups and getting it. But like I said, our government is behind it. It's just taking so long to get it right. And our media seems to always have positive slants, but you will get trolled afterwards. And it's very hard to, sometimes you just have to switch off for those, because it's sometimes hard to hear, but what you've done is good, and that's so.
Cuando dice que está el gobierno detrás suyo, o digamos que se siente respaldada de alguna manera, también en este proceso de dar a conocer, o sea, siente ese apoyo para dar a conocer, expresar compartir su experiencia, pues por redes sociales o si quiere ir a los medios de comunicación, siente ese apoyo gubernamental, digamos.
Yeah, no, it's possibly maybe even one of the very few issues that you will have a government where not only the present government and the opposition speak together on this. So we are in a very lucky position in that. We don't have any government parties, any mainstream government parties that are against this or putting a negative slant on it. So I definitely feel, that we're very lucky to have. But again, it's politics, and it's about, like, I know that you have, an election coming up. Politicians are strategic at the end of the day. And if they think it's a popular topic, they'll stand beside it. If they don't, they won't. So I think our political parties, even though they've had kind of differences on, let's say, the abortion or same-sex marriage, some of those quite, strong issues, I think the others are seeing the support that surrogacy is getting, so they are coming together. So it's about making it attractive for a politician to stand beside. It's about strategy. It's not about trying to convince them how lovely this is or reaching to their heart. It's about showing them that this is the way to go. Other countries are doing that and that sort of thing. So we are in a lucky position, and it's very frustrating to hear other countries where you have very important, political people are standing up with these slanderous things being said about me personally, of what I did and the women here today. It's very sad that that's happening. But look, you just have to, like anything, you have to keep going, and you have to keep getting the positives around it. And you have to also lay out, it's happening. It's happening. It's not like it's going to be new and they have to prepare for something new. It's happening. So you need to, what you think you're doing by protecting women is you're not doing it by not having legislation. You're doing the opposite. And that's the point that needs to be hounded, that you are not looking after your women. You are not looking after, intended families. And you're not doing that. So this is what you need to do. But hopefully with this fantastic group of people, you're on the right way.
Muchas gracias. Kelsey, sobre la publicidad en Estados Unidos, porque cuando pienso a veces en publicidad y Estados Unidos, pues me vienen las campañas de Coca-Cola, ¿no? Pero supongo que esto no debe ser así. Usted, ¿cómo conoció la gestación por sustitución? ¿Nos ha hablado Becky de redes sociales? ¿O cómo es en el caso de Estados Unidos?
So, like, I've never seen, like, advertising per se, like you said, with the billboards. But, like, I don't know if it's just because I'm a surrogate, but I get a lot of advertisement on Facebook for different agencies. But before that, it was my mom had actually mentioned being a surrogate for my aunt, and it kind of made me, like, process what is a surrogate, and it made me look into it. And then going through infertility on my own to get pregnant with my kids, and then my sister also had to go through IVF to get pregnant. It's just something that became very clear to me that it was something that I needed to do. Like, I feel very called to being a surrogate, to be able to help other families be a surrogate. But as for, like, advertisement, I didn't know anything. I had to go and research. I think I went through 10 agencies before I found mine, just to find the right one that was willing to work with different restrictions, because, like, for me, like my BMI is a little higher. So like most clinics won't use you because your BMI is higher, but all of my pregnancies were completely healthy. I had no complications. So it was just a matter of finding the right agency and the right clinic to want to work with what you have. But yeah, it was pretty much me teaching it on my own. And then once I got with an agency, them kind of walking me through the process and the legal standpoints and all of that.
Hay un proceso, digamos, de autodidacta, de ir seleccionando fuentes, viendo cuál es el mejor y, claro. Norma, y en el caso de México, ¿cómo conoce sobre la gestación por sustitución? ¿Le llega publicidad o por el boca a boca a lo mejor?
Pues realmente es más por las redes sociales. Yo gran parte de la cantidad de procesos que he conocido que han llevado gestantes es por el Facebook. O sea, en México la mayoría está muy metida en lo que es el Facebook. Entonces existen grupos en Facebook de donde se agregan agencias, se meten chicas a lo mejor para ver en qué agencia están dando mejor compensación, y por medio de estos grupos es que ellas conocen en qué agencia se está dando pues una mejor compensación, en donde aceptan a lo mejor gestantes que sean casadas, en donde aceptan gestantes que vivan en el Estado de México, porque también hay que conocer que está Ciudad de México y Estado de México. Entonces muchos abogados no quieren llevar procesos de gestantes que vivan en el Estado de México. O sea, los requisitos te mencionan que solamente sean mujeres que vivan en la Ciudad de México, pero posiblemente en esos grupos de Facebook puedes encontrar una agencia que diga, sí acepto chicas del Estado. Entonces, aquí, ¿cómo se maneja en la Ciudad de México? O al menos, ¿en dónde vas a encontrar agencias y gestantes? En grupos de Facebook. O conocidas de chicas que ya hicieron el proceso, te empiezan a referir a su agencia, o entre ellas se empiezan a pasar información de otro tipo de agencias, y es así como llegan mujeres a hacer sus procesos pues a diferentes lugares.
Claro, el papel de las redes sociales.
Sí, exacto. Pero ahí está súper fuerte, o sea, el tema de Facebook, porque yo en mi caso, por ejemplo, que me he metido a Instagram, que me he metido a, no sé, pues sí, Twitter, no lo hay, o sea, realmente no hay. Pero buscas en Facebook, bueno, hay hasta grupos donde hay papás de intención buscando gestante y dan ahí tal cual una pequeña reseña de ellos, y las chicas empiezan a comentar y se empiezan a conectar luego ellos de manera independiente para poder llevar el proceso. O a veces ellos ya tienen todo, ya tienen la parte legal, ya tienen los médicos y solamente están en busca de la gestante, y ellos publican y ya varias chicas empiezan ahí a hacer como el match de alguna forma con ellos, a tener la videollamada, a tener una conversación para ver si se puede llevar a cabo el proceso. Al menos en la Ciudad de México, el mayor o la red social donde más mujeres vas a encontrar que quieren llevar su proceso es en Facebook.
Me impresiona mucho que se concentre todo hacia una plataforma, porque ha sido también compartida por Kelsey y demás. Tengo aquí más preguntas. Yo es que me parecen tan agradables las tres que estaría todo el día preguntándoles cosas, pero es que creo que como el tiempo está volando bastante, yo creo que es un buen momento para abrir el turno de palabras, cederle la voz aquí al público, por si tienen preguntas y que interactúen con ustedes. Yo sí, me he centrado mucho en la legalidad, tenía más preguntas, pero bueno, es que me parecían cosas interesantes y he ido insistiendo. Creo que por aquí hay una pregunta, no sé si... Ya, aquí delante, Eva. Este señor de aquí. Perdón.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Me ha encantado el testimonio de las tres. Yo os haría una pregunta muy sencilla. ¿En qué punto vuestra autonomía y vuestra decisión sobre el embarazo ha podido influir vuestra pareja o vuestra pareja? Gracias.
Podría... O sea, ¿no he entendido bien la pregunta?
No he entendido bien la pregunta.
O sea, se refiere a... Perdón, se refiere a tomar la decisión de prestar de ser gestante, que si su pareja le ha influido en esa decisión, se refiere.
Es una pregunta global. Por ejemplo, en el caso de Kelsey, cuando nos ha comentado que se vio de alguna manera, vamos, que los padres querían que interrumpiera el embarazo, esa decisión Si la tomó ella, si tuvo en cuenta a su pareja, es decir, durante todo el proceso, antes y durante el proceso. Es decir, si en todas las decisiones relacionadas directamente con su proceso de gestación tuvo alguna influencia la opinión de su pareja. Gracias.
Sí, en general, si cuenta, digamos, algo la opinión de la pareja.
So in my case, my first journey, I was married, and me and him had discussed it very thoroughly about what was going to happen, and he agreed that it was best for us, and we, went through the process together. My second journey, I was engaged, and in the process of when it came to wanting the termination, he was very strongly against it for me because he could see how much it was hurting me to have to go through that. So he was a very big supporter on me finding out my rights and making sure that I didn't have to go through something I didn't want to go through. But as for like the decision on its own, it was 100% me. Obviously, I asked my partners if they would be okay with it, and we discussed it. But for the most part, it was 100% my decision.
Yeah, so it was similar. So the weekend I went away, it was myself and my late husband, and it was his friends, and it was him that made the first suggestion. He said, well, she can make babies and you want one. So he saw it so simply. But when going home, I consulted all my 4 children and my late husband. We sat down and we had a real conversation of how we felt it might impact us being pregnant, as well as then the connection, but once I felt the kids had a similar thought of me, that this was their baby and we were growing it and there was no confusion on their part. That was very important, that my children didn't find it confusing, but they understood it completely. So yeah, we definitely all did it as a family. Whoever together we made the decision. But like Kelsey says, at the end of the day, it is my final decision. But you need everyone on board. You need everybody to understand the process and to agree to it for it to be successful, I think. Yeah.
Bueno, en lo personal, mi proceso fue muy curioso porque yo le platiqué a mi esposo sobre la gestación subrogada y él me dijo, tú en cualquier momento vas a llegar embarazada y ni me vas a avisar. Y así fue. O sea, yo en ese entonces trabajaba en un despacho, pero mi horario era muy prolongado, o sea, era de 8 de la mañana a luego 9, 10 de la noche. Y me acuerdo que fui a mi transferencia, me dieron mi resultado y yo estaba en el trabajo. Entonces yo tenía así como que ni siquiera fue como que, sí, embarazada, seguí trabajando. Entonces llego a casa, me duermo y pasaron los 10 días para ya ir a confirmar latido fetal. Y ese día no voy a trabajar. Y mi esposo, ¿no vas a ir a trabajar? No, es que hoy tengo mi ultrasonido. ¿Cómo? Yo, sí, es que estoy embarazada. Sí, entonces fue como que, bueno, pues ya que te digo, ¿no? Ya lo hiciste, yo sabía que lo ibas a hacer así. Entonces fue como de, pues ya ni me meto, ya la dejo. Es como que te apoyo, porque él sabía que pues mis embarazos eran muy tranquilos. Entonces él siempre me dijo, yo sé que si tus embarazos fueran de riesgo, te pusieras mal, a lo mejor sí hubiera influido él en involucrarse. Pero me dijo, realmente pues no, lo llevas muy tranquila, no me vas a tomar en cuenta, entonces como para qué voy a involucrarme en algo que sé que no me vas a considerar. Entonces conmigo pues ya se lo esperaba.
It's also a great way to have a joke as well, because we would be out, and especially in Ireland, it's not that thing. Some would say, congratulations to my late husband, and he would say, it's not mine. And I would then respond, it's not mine either. So it can also, you can have a lot of fun with it too.
The look on their faces.
Yeah, they're trying to work it out.
Sí, por favor.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a las tres por vuestra intervención. Mi pregunta es para Becky. So you have said that you are legally the mother in Ireland. Mm-hmm. So how does it affect your surrogate baby? So I'm talking on the legal side. So does the baby have any child support rights? And how does it affect your own children? So I'm thinking about, for example, inheritance rights. Yeah. So are they affected?
Yeah, completely. And this was, again, something, because we had no guidance or anything. It was only recently I thought, hold on a second, Pori could come along and say, well, actually, not that I have anything, but, you know, he could have entitlement rights. So, and again, this is the part that why I really want legislation, because it's very degrading and it's very hard to sign a paper. So I had to sign a paper saying that I give up my maternal right to my child. And that's not what I'm doing, but I had to sign it. So I gave up my rights. So it meant that the biological father, he had to get a DNA test, and that he has the rights to make decisions medically and everything, and I don't. But I can still come back with still a legal stance as the mother in that. And then I can also then sign another paper saying that I give up my complete rights to being the child's mother. Again, it's wrong, it's not right, it's not what I'm doing, but this is what I have to sign in Ireland under the current laws, just so they can have. And then in Ireland, this is one of the biggest issues that we talk about, is that you have another father or the mother who don't have legal rights and aren't called the mother, and they can't even, like, if the child needed any medical assistance, they can't sign for that, their child. They have no rights, and the only way they can get rights is to adopt their own child and go through the scrutiny of that process. And that's very sad. So there's a lot of, you know, because we have to sign these under the current laws, etc. But with the regards to the inheritance, we have to get a legal letter drawn up. We haven't done it yet, but we have to get a legal letter to kind of explain our situation. But at the end of the day, the surrogate baby could easily, you know, if he takes a notion, he could defy it and say, no, you gave birth to me, I'm entitled. So that's why it's very important that when you bring in legislation to a country, and this was something that was going to be omitted from Irish law, was the retrospective situation. So I was going to be, even all the going forward, it was going to be fantastic, but we wouldn't benefit from the legalities over this. So that's why it's really important that these retrospective situations come in, so I can now sign to say, I'm not the mother, he has two fathers, or you have a mother and a father, and again, they have no legal rights to my inheritance or anything like that. So it's those things that you don't think about when you don't, and because unless you specifically ask those questions, which you don't think about, it leaves you so vulnerable. We're just leaving people vulnerable without legislation. So, but yeah, it's a good question, but yeah, I still have to do it.
I understand what you mean by the degrading part, because I actually have to sign that same paper to sign my rights away, even though it's not my egg or anything. I have to sign my rights away saying that I'm giving up this child in order for them to take custody of the kid. So I completely understand the way you feel on that.
Yeah, the language is so important.
Yeah.
Like how we legislate with the language we use is so important to make sure that we're respectful to everybody, and we still lack in that, I think, with how we communicate that thing. And also we've got to get, if you think about, I talked about the transition. When you bring in legislation, there's going to be a transition period. You're not going to have enough surrogates within Spain or Ireland because it's not spoke about. So women are still going to have that, and I've had loads of people said to me, I could never do that. I could never do that, because it's just not a conversation, but it's not normal. And that's why you have to have that. But you're also going to have to kind of educate the medical staff, because one thing we wanted was they kept referring to me as the mother. And I said, well, is it okay? I'm not the mother, and that. So again, the language, it's a transition, and it's a very kind of, it's a mistake not done out of nastiness or anything like that. It's just lack of knowledge or lack of understanding or common, or knowing what's going on. So we're going to have to kind of look at the language and how we deal with situations, isn't it? So.
Sé que estamos en hora, no sé si yo puedo hacer una pregunta.
Por supuesto.
No sé si da
Por
tiempo.
favor.
Vale. Hemos hablado antes de cómo los contratos os protegen en casos de que os quieran obligar a hacer cosas que no queráis hacer. Yo me preguntaba qué ocurre en la situación inversa. Si en algún momento quisierais poder abortar o quisierais tomar un avión en momentos avanzados, o me estaba acordando de cuando decíais lo de igual los padres no quieren que me tiña el pelo, ¿no? Si en algún momento habéis sentido que os haya podido pasar eso, ¿no? En alguna situación. No tiene por qué ser legal de contrato, pero ¿cómo os habéis sentido en ese respecto? Así es, muy ambigua. Puede que no os haya pasado nunca.
Norma, ¿quieres?
Sí, pues es que realmente esas situaciones que acabas de hacer en tu pregunta las contempla en el contrato. O sea, te contempla en ciertos meses hasta dónde puedes salir. Ejemplo, yo cuando tenía entre 5 o 6 meses salí a la playa con mi familia y mis hijos, pero previo a esa salida tuve que ir al médico para que el médico checara que yo estaba en condiciones de viajar y de poder salir sin poderme poner en riesgo. Obviamente también hasta una cierta distancia. No podía a lo mejor trasladarme a otro país, pero sí a lo mejor a algún lugar con playa donde yo pudiera pasar las vacaciones con mi familia, siempre y cuando el médico pues asegurara que mi condición era apta para poder viajar. Pero eso te lo contempla el contrato. En cuanto a teñirte el cabello y cosas así, el médico decía, ok, después de durante los primeros 3 meses no es sano porque sí puede afectar a la gestación, pero posterior te recomiendan hasta tintes, ¿no? De no, es que esto sí incluye esto y esto no. Ok. O sea, hay opciones, ¿no? No es como que el contrato también nos tenga reprimidas a no salir, a no pintarnos, a no maquillarnos, a no podernos o hacer ciertas cosas que pues nos impidan llevar una vida pues bien, no nos tienen como tal, sí, o sea, realmente reprimidas, pero sí hacer las cosas con un previo, que el doctor, por ejemplo, en este caso salir, nos diga, ok, si estás apta, ve de vacaciones, o si te puedes teñir el cabello, sabes que no, porque puede que este químico te pueda dañar, pero pues lo contempla todo el contrato, o sea, todos los riesgos, todos los consecuencias que llega a pasar con tu cuerpo, con tu salud, con tu mente, con todo, lo contempla el contrato.
So yeah, basically the same. So in my contracts, there'll be like subcategories. So like travel, like so for travel up until like a certain gestational week, I can only go so far, and then after like 32 weeks, you can only go like 100 miles from your hospital, and like it's very, very detailed and put in there on like what you can and can't do. So like the hair dyeing. Both my contracts were per doctor's advisement. So as long as my doctor was like, okay, cool, it was all right. So like for me, I had to get doctor approval to take melatonin because it helps me sleep. So because that's natural, but it's still a medication, you have to get approval. It's all in the contract. They line it in and they're like, this is, you know, even if they wanted me on a special diet, that would be on there. And again, if anything changes, like, so say I'm 32 weeks and my grandma dies, all I have to do is contact the agency or the people and like get the okay from my doctor that's safe for me to travel, and then it would be okay. So it's all based on getting approval.
Did you feel like comfortable with all these details? Did you feel comfortable?
Yeah, it was nothing like out of the norm. I mean, I've been pregnant, so like it was nothing out of the norm, not eating soft cheeses, not, you know, normal thing, not having caffeine, things that you're not supposed to do when you're pregnant anyways. So
Did you think like, oh, it's too much, like, why, like, you know, for travel, like you said?
Never.
Like it's too much?
Because I wouldn't have traveled past that point anyways, being that pregnant, because you could pop at any time at that point. So like for me.
So nothing in the contract you felt like
No, not at all. Not at all.
You.
I was very comfortable with my contracts both times. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So we, looking back, hindsight, I wish we did have a contract because we struggled. I struggled sometimes having those, what I would call awkward conversations about asking them, or they would feel awkward talking to me saying, look, Becky, we want to put a water filter in your, you know, or we don't want you to, you know, and I had already had 4 children, so if anyone's had more than one, you know that thing, so when something drops on the floor, you have to sanitize for the first one, and by the 4th one, as long as it's not walking by itself, give it to it, it's fine. So I was in a frame of mind of like, it'll be fine, like, you know, I'll have a little bit of pate, or, you know, where they were these first time parents. So I did have moments where I was very overwhelmed actually with the closeness and them coming up on a Friday when I'd been knackered or tired from the week. So there were times I did think, wow, I knew it was going to be intimate, I knew we were going to, but it was just they wanted to be there all the time, and they would come up on a Friday, and now they'd bring dinner and my cut up mango and all the stuff that I asked them to do, but I wasn't that demanding, but yeah, there was times I felt like stifled a bit. I didn't anticipate like being told everything. I thought I would just carry the baby. So I think, but having structure like that, you have the anticipation, you've got that, you know what's coming, you've sorted out, you've had the conversations. Where we were struggling on a day-to-day, they were finding it a bit awkward asking me not to do things or do things, and I was then asking them things. So yeah, it's very much in the dark when you don't have that structure, but it was overwhelming sometimes, yeah, I must admit.
So from your point of view, now that you passed the journey, surrogacy journey, you would put in your contract, in your next contract, imagine your next contract, surrogacy journey contract, that like a communication, or to see each other once every 2 weeks, you know, like you know that once a week it's too much, so yeah. I would put exactly. Once a month or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not doing another journey because I'm way too old, but
if you would,
I would, hindsight, if I was giving advice to a new surrogate, I'd say really think about all the scenarios. But you have to be a bit flexible as well, because maybe you don't mind all the visits and maybe you don't mind all that, but and the parents have to also be able to read you to see, do you know what, she's tired and she needs some support, but yeah.
Okay, last question.
It's actually not a question, but more of a statement. So my name is Casey, and I'm from the U.S., and I'm a gestational carrier twice. And I wanted to add, I guess, a little more perspective. When you're drawing up a contract and you're matching with intended parents, every agency is a little different. But when you're entering into this process, you have matching preferences, something that you might be comfortable with or maybe something you're not comfortable with. And it's part of the agency's job to make sure that everybody understands what that expectation is. And maybe I don't want to color my hair, or maybe I do want to color my hair, and I'm going to match with intended parents that understand that and that we're like-minded. So when we're entering into this contract, we both know what that expectation is and how that process should look. So it's understanding what does the parents want and what do I want, and making sure that that is understood before entering into this process. And that's why there's 2 legal contracts. The intended parents are managed by their attorney, and then I'm managed by my attorney, who's going to represent me and go through that contract and fully understand what that expectation is. And then I make sure that I'm comfortable with it before entering into that process.
You want to add something to this comment?
Okay, if it's fine, we can finish.
Pues vamos a cerrar aquí esta mesa. Ya hemos visto qué situaciones pueden suceder cuando no hay leyes, cuando todo depende de una hiperregulación por las partes, o cuando cambian las cosas de un sitio a otro. Yo creo que son 3 ejemplos magníficos de lo que puede pasar sin, digamos, saber a qué atenernos como sociedad. Como ya nos están cortando, pues vamos a hacer una breve pausa y cerraremos luego con la última mesa sobre el altruismo y el trabajo. Muchas gracias por su atención.